Okay, it looks like it's 4 after 6 p.m., so we'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the previous meeting? Entertain a motion to approve. You have a motion to a second. Okay, thank you, Eric. I have a motion and a second. Is there any changes, corrections, additions need to be made? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And abstentions? Abstentions? Go ahead. Abstentions?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I thought you were saying extensions.
I'm not sorry. All right. The motion passed. And moving on to the report from the Board of Commissioners, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Commissioners had their last meeting on December the 17th, and during that meeting, items of relevance for the Planning Commission. Building inspector reported that we had 26 open permits, and let's see, other things that we had ordinance amending the City of Townsend zoning map to rezone a parcel at 7522 Old Highway 73 from B1 to B2. And the result of that vote, that was on the first hearing, was that the request was advanced and passed unanimously with 3 yea votes. Also under new business, Mr. Akert addressed the Board of Commissioners, request amending the current zoning regulations to allow property owners to camp on their property, and also provided some additional feedback on that. I think I asked for any input from the community on folks that would be interested in revisiting those zoning ordinances. If that's the case, then that would come to the Planning Commission first for a recommendation. We would hold a workshop, and that would come to the Planning Commission, then a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And so that's how that request would be handled. We also had a presentation from Chairman Talley presented to the board, and a letter that he had drafted included a number of points. One of the main points there was a suggestion to reinstitute B1, B2 zoning regulations the way they were prior to the B3, and there was some discussion on that, and the Board of Commissioners agreed that they needed more time to review this request. We also looked at ordinance amending the zoning regulations relative to grading and driveway access on first reading. There's quite a bit of discussion on that. We're going to hear about that again tonight, I know. And we received public input, and no action was taken on that at first reading. And then we also looked at a budget amendment to reconcile our budget and did a special event application. And during the meeting, I asked for a special call meeting on Friday, January the 3rd, and that would be to look at some of the key priorities. Actually, this was a special call meeting, and let me just move now to telling about that special call meeting. So we had a special call meeting for the purpose filling vacancies on the Planning Commission and on the BZA. And so the Board of Commissioners recommended, and the Mayor agreed to appoint Joanne Funk as a new member of the Planning Commission. So welcome to Joanne. We also, as Board of Commissioners, voted on 2 new members for the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so those members were John McMahon and Tony McAvoy, and we will be having a BZA meeting tonight. So really pleased for these citizens that have stepped up to fill these roles, very important roles on the Planning Commission and on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Then we had a workshop on January the 3rd to talk about key priorities from the city. So I had highlighted for commissioners some of the key priorities that I would like to see us address in November. And generally, I think there was agreement on the key priorities for the current Board of Commissioners. And that, of course, our current Board of Commissioners goes through August of 2026. So I had envisioned that we would have a work plan on how we're going to address these key priorities. Now, one of the key priorities does have to do with the role of the Board of Commissioners with respect to the Planning Commission. So I want to be clear and make sure that there's no surprises by members of the Planning Commission on what the intent is and what the Board of Commissioners agreed on. We're going to take a look at our municipal code to see if we can expand the role of the Board of Commissioners in actually appointing the members of the Planning Commission. As you all know, right now, the members of the Planning Commission are appointed by the mayor. But as I've heard from commissioners, and I think I have their collective support as a result of input at this workshop, that we are planning to modify our municipal code so that there is a greater role for the Board of Commissioners in the appointment of planning commissioners. Now, in conjunction with that, there is also an intent to ask planning commissioners if they would like to continue their appointments once we get this new part of the municipal code put into place. And so one of my last acts as mayor, and being in charge of appointments of the planning commissioners, would be to ask all the planning commissioners if they would like to continue. And if they would like to continue, then their names will go ahead and go forward. We'll also have a call for expressions of interest for additional members that would like to join that planning commission. And then if we are successful in changing the municipal code, then the entire Board of Commissioners would appoint a slate of planning commissioners, and we would stagger their terms as appropriate. Also, as part of that change to the municipal code, I'd like to explore things like training requirement and other things just to make sure that our planning commissioners are fully up to speed. You all have done a great job. Some of you just started tonight, recognize that, but at the same time, I think we have heard from our community over the past year or so that they would like to have the Board of Commissioners have a greater role in that. So that was our collective priority, and that's what we will be working toward as a Board of Commissioners. Some of the other things that we agreed to continue working on is completing the update of the community plan, reviewing and update as needed city administrative organization and staffing, review and update the process for the city budget formulation and implementation, review and revise existing ordinances and develop new ordinances which may be lacking, review the charges and membership of existing committees, develop project plans for key infrastructure projects, review and update city administrative procedures, including purchasing, timekeeping, and travel, review and develop as needed record-keeping systems with focus on standardization and digitization, and review city communications, update and expand as needed for transparency, city website, social media, and recordings. And we had some additional input from commissioners I didn't capture in my notes here. Commissioner Jenkins, do you recall there was a couple of things in particular that folks wanted to add to this list of priorities.
One of the things we talked about is perhaps there's a need, as one of the citizens had recommended, to have a B4 zone, which would encompass overnight rentals like campgrounds, luxury cabin developments, that sort of thing.
That's right. You had mentioned taking a look at overnight rentals and things, and so those were the priorities that we agreed on. We will continue to assemble that feedback and put it out so that people can be aware of it. But I did want to share that information about the Planning Commission in particular because it has relevance. So that's a pretty fulsome report from the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor?
How many of the building permits that are out are commercial and how many are residential? Do we know offhand?
I would say it's less than half, probably 60-40, residential 60, commercial 40. I don't have that data in front of me.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll move on to the public input. If anybody signed up for public input, you'll have 3 minutes. You'll be able to come up to the microphone and address the commission.
Mr. Akers did.
Thank you. Mike Aker, 7511 Old Highway 73. Couple of things. In the workshop the other night, we mentioned the Swinging Bridge, and I have spoken with both Jeff Jopling and Brad Bowers, and we will be bringing a resolution to the county commission next month to repair the bridge. So,
Thank you.
now that's a tourist gathering thing for all of Blount County, and Blount County's been maintaining those bridges for many years, so it just seemed like a natural fit, and I wanted to say that I did that. The other thing that I want to mention, that I mentioned the other night as well, is the driveway permit thing. I'm absolutely in favor of there being a driveway permit application process for anybody that's cutting a curb in Townsend. I think that's wonderful. I think it ought to stop with the driveway permit and not have anything else, and let TDEC take care of TDEC stuff, and Townsend have a thing that they're working with TDOT with about there being a driveway curb cut, and Townsend gets some revenue from the permit, and everybody wins, and none of the property owners lose about their trees or about their grading or about things that really shouldn't be anybody else's business if we're in a free country like we think we are. So I want y'all to please consider that as that moves forward about property ownership rights. I have a resolution before the Blount County Commission right now about property ownership rights, because our planning department at Blount County tends to tell certain people some things and certain other people other things on the exact same issue, that we needed to follow the black and white letter of the law. And when Joe Ball, property owner, comes up and says, I want to put a power meter here, our planning department's not telling them no if it's not forbidden. But that is happening to certain people in Blount County, and I'm trying to stop that by also saying that when they're denied their permit, we have to cite the law that says that you can't do that on private property. And I'm an advocate for property ownership rights, as y'all have heard me preach about many times, but I am doing something about it from my perspective with the county to try to do the same thing. So anyway, thank y'all for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Aker, we appreciate that.
Don Hader? Question mark?
Well, I wish I had a copy of this to study it more, but I didn't, so I can't say too much, but that's somewhat of an improvement from last.
All right, that's the end of the public input. All we had signed up.
That's it?
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Tim. Okay, I'd like to change new business, if we can amend the agenda just a little bit to where we have the election of the secretary. We've been operating without a secretary for almost a year, I think,
About 4 months.
since Steve left, not Sandy. So at this time, we need to elect a secretary from the Board of Commissioners. So I'd like to open the floor up for nominations. Anyone would like to nominate a secretary position?
What does it entail?
It entails keeping the minutes, writing the minutes, signing any official documents that are passed by the board. It's basically it's the official signature that verifies all the actions that we take on the board.
City recorder provides assistance with the minutes, so you wouldn't necessarily have to draft from scratch. So.
I just don't have, because I know myself, I don't have, like, computers, I'm distancing myself.
I don't think it would necessarily be necessary.
Any nominations for secretary? I nominate Haskell Red to be the secretary.
I second.
I would like to, I would like to say that I would gladly accept for the fact that my hearing is not everything that it was when I was 20 years old, and we'd probably be better served to have someone else actually operate in that capacity.
Okay. In that instance, I nominate Pat Jenkins.
I second.
My responsibilities with the city commission are overwhelming, and to take on additional work doesn't seem appropriate. I don't think I can do a good job.
I think it would be better, I don't know if there's anything that precludes that necessarily, but I do think it would be better if it was one of the other 5 members. And of course, we're missing one person tonight, but he already has a job as the vice chair.
I think as this might be an excellent way to learn about the operations of the planning commission from a starter perspective, though I don't know her very well, our newest member, Joanne, might be perfect for this. I'd nominate Joanne.
This happened to Joanne last time she was on the board. I sat down and she became secretary. This is why I was ready for this. But back then, all I had to do was sign things. There was no recording, there was no typing, there was the city employee did all that.
I think that's still the case.
So I'm just a signature?
You would have to review the minutes.
Right.
As somebody, as the secretary, your function would be to make sure that, you do have the primary responsibility for the minutes, but you would get a reasonably complete draft from city staff.
Okay, so I'm just reviewing.
However, by the code, it's the secretary's responsibility to draft the minutes as well. So if the other individual doesn't want to draft them, the responsibility will fall on the secretary.
I do not have the equipment to do that. I am retired. I don't have a TV, I don't have internet, I don't have cable. I live in the Stone Ages.
That leaves us with Mr. Eric Stein.
Does the planning commission have a budget?
No, it's all volunteer.
We have regular support for helping to prepare the minutes. I can't recall any time in the last time that since I've been on the planning commission, that there was ever failure to provide some sort of a draft for the secretary to begin with drafting their part of the minutes.
I wonder what the cost might be if we were to provide someone who might transcribe minutes for us from the tape that we have of the proceedings. I wonder what the cost might be for something like that.
It's already covered by city staff. City staff time does that and regularly provides a first draft. But the chairman is right, the responsibility is to draft and prepare the minutes. But I cannot remember a time when there has not been a really good first draft that's already provided by city staff.
I would have to use the city equipment, come in here and desk and computers and all that, and I don't have that. I would have to use the city's.
Oh, we can probably do that.
And I will be provided a draft. I haven't even been nominated. I don't think it is.
One of the main functions, and Mr. Chairman, I'm sort of getting into your purview here, it is important for the planning commission to have a secretary and to have officers. One of the main functions is to sign the copies of the site plans and things like that on behalf of the planning commission. So it is very important to have a secretary.
And we need a secretary. We haven't had one in a long time. So
Agreed.
somebody's got to step up and do it. Can't be me, it can't be Commissioner Lindsay.
All right. You haven't even nominated, I haven't even been nominated.
I think Haskell was suggesting a nomination. Did you make that as an official nomination?
I did.
Okay, so we have a nomination.
Who seconds?
You just need one nomination.
If I can use city equipment.
Okay, so you accept the nomination. All right. Okay, we have a nomination for secretary for Joanne Funk. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Opposed? Okay, motion passed unanimously.
sincerely like to welcome Joanne to our planning commission. I have been the newest member of the planning commission now for the last year, and though I know she has experience with this planning commission in the past, I'm very happy to welcome a new member and welcome Joanne. And thank you for all you're going to do.
All right, thank you. Moving on, new business, item number 1, we have site plan for 7511 Old Highway 73, Mr. Mike Akers. Mr. Akers, if you'd like to just give us an overview of this different new site plan that you provided for us, and then we'll entertain it.
Okay, so we got rezoned so that we could build a single-family dwelling on the property, which wasn't the plan. But my engineering firm informed me that if we were to be raising the property up 4 feet to park the motorhome in the big building that we were previously before the planning commission asking for, that we would have to not only pay to raise the place that much, but that we would have to get a river study for FEMA in order to determine what would happen to the floodwaters when they got up to what used to be underwater but would now be above water. And he and my engineering firm informed me that the cost of that study is $45,000, and there's no guarantee on the other side that you're going to get to do what you were wanting to do, which kind of made it cost prohibitive to pursue that original plan. And since we can build a single-family dwelling on the property in the new zone, I brought a tiny home site plan in, putting a tiny home on stilts so that it doesn't require the study of the river anymore, because the river just goes right through the stilts. And I can do this whole project for about what the study was going to cost the other way, much less building the building and raising the property. So it was a lot more appealing to me to pursue this avenue, even though this wasn't my first choice of the way to do it. I believe Mr. Talley and I went over the checklist last week to try to determine if I was actually doing what I was supposed to be doing with what I turned in, because, well, I'm tired of not turning in what I'm supposed to turn in. And my engineer telling me that I've got everything in order, and it's not in order. So I think we're in order with turning in everything that we're supposed to turn in. And I believe I've got my ducks in a row at this time. y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ager. I'll now ask our planner, Mr. Kim, if you've had a chance to review it, if you have any additional comments or your first view of the site plan and your comments.
I am happy you finally come up with something you can work with. So I am very happy to see that, so thank you. Everything looks fine to me. Oh, sorry. Everything looks fine to me. The design, all the specs. The only thing I mentioned to you was that the letters that he was going to get from his co-owners was all that we would need to.
Okay.
But in terms of the schematics presented, I think they meet it.
Okay, we'll address that in just a second. All right, in order to get this to discussion, I entertain a motion to approve the site plan. Okay, I have a motion to approve from Eric. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second, so we'll discuss the site plan. The reference that Kim was speaking of, I know that you brought the letter before that stated that the other owners of the property were agreeable to the building and the site plan. Just we don't have a copy on this site plan or with the site plan, so.
Can I go out with the truck and get them?
Yes,
you
you sure can. You sure can.
All right, I'll be right back.
And we'll have a look and discuss the site plan as well.
Mr. Chairman, just a question on this. It appears that Mr. Aker has submitted 2 site plans. That's a little bit unusual for us to consider 2 site plans. I think, which one are we considering?
I've only seen the one.
So is he not moving forward with this one with the gravel pad with
Yeah.
nothing?
I was told that there was one site plan, he produced one site plan, we reviewed one, but I was surprised to see on the agenda it says 2 site plans. But as far as I know, there was never, that was the previous meeting where he did produce 2 site plans. So I don't know if that's some confusion held over from the last agenda. But as far as I know, this is the only site plan that's been presented for us to review at this meeting.
Okay, then we should clarify with Mr. Aker, this is the only one that we're looking at.
This only one that he's produced, yes.
Well, that's fine, because I think the first one is in violation of the ordinance.
Okay, as Mr. Aker indicated, when he completed his site plan, he brought it over to me to have a quick review, and I went through the checklist with him, and we reviewed all the items to make sure that they were either present and addressed on the site plan, or a notation to be made that they were not applicable due to the nature of this building being a residence rather than a business site. Therefore, the need for refuse collection centers is not needed for signage, and lighting plans and things of that nature when you're dealing with a residence is not a requirement. Has everyone had a chance to review the site plan?
I need some clarification. If this tiny home is factory built, and it's not going to be stick built and inspected by our codes guys to make sure it's built to our specs. And when I read 8-410, it says it shall be unlawful to occupy, allowed to be occupied, stored, or placed, or allowed to be stored, or placed any temporary, mobile, factory-built, or factory-assembled structure.
Where? Is that the whole entire paragraph?
Well, there's more to the paragraph, but it clearly says if it's factory-built, it's not allowed as a residence. You can read it.
Page 64.
8-410. And I just want clarification if that applies to it.
I've got another request for a clarification. I'll let you take a look at that one.
What was your citation?
8-410.
8-14. I think it's page 61 or
64.
64.
It's actually a kit, it doesn't come built. And it would require an inspection by the Townsend building inspector before I could get a certificate of occupation.
So it is not factory built or factory assembled.
Correct, we're building
Assembled
it.
as a kit,
Yeah.
and it'll be sort of stick built.
It's,
It comes in pieces and it's put together on site here. Some of the walls will be built, some of the sections will be built, but the actual kit is put together here on site. So there'll be a footing inspection, there'll be a framing inspection, there'll be an energy inspection, there'll be 4 or 5 inspections during the process. To my knowledge, based off the plan I reviewed, that's the way I understand it to work. It's not a factory-built unit that's brought in here and set on top of some poles. It's actually built here on site.
And also, were those 3 different pictures? I mean, you're just gonna pick one of the 3, or is that an
so the three different pictures that were there were, the top picture is the color, the middle picture is the style, and the bottom picture is to show what it looks like up on stilts, like it's gonna have to be in back. And they didn't, the company that provided the pictures didn't have any one of them as a standalone. And I don't want a yellow house, so I included the brown version that's up above it as what color it would be. It will have a gabled roof like the yellow house does, a porch on the front of it like the yellow house does, and will be on stilts like the very bottom picture so the viewer can go under it when that 100-year flood actually comes.
So it's the middle house on stilts.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments about the site plan?
I say if you have an ordinance that does in fact eliminate the factory-built structures, we are probably at a point where, you know, unless we modify the ordinance somehow, unless the board of commissioners modify the ordinance somehow, that is, of course, we're eliminating a lot of what might be tiny homes in town anyway. And we've acted a year or so ago in opposition to this provision in the ordinance with our approval of the hotel that was yonder, because those boxes are coming in rebuilt.
Right.
Just FYI, that's something else and not something we can go back and fix now, but that's something that will potentially be coming before us at some future point in time as well. And just as a kind of a bookmark on where we are with all of this.
That's how I thought about yonder when it came through, and I knew that this has been on the books a long time. I remembered this.
It's been on the books from the very beginning, and we've
Because I
had
wanted
several
to live-
manufactured homes through all the years. We've got mobile home parks, and we entertained an ordinance to remove the underpinning from mobile homes and put skirting in. We just did that a couple months ago. So apparently this is one of those nuances that has been in the books, hidden in the books for a long time, and it does not seem as though it's in the spirit of what our planning is anyway, because we've had it for years and we've got mobile homes here. So in regards to that, I would consider this ordinance to be in error, and the ordinance needing to be corrected. I could imagine moving forward with a planning and building process where no manufactured structures of any kind are going to be used in the city of Townsend, because it's becoming more and more popular way to build and to come in. So I think the spirit of that does need to be looked at, and good catch on finding it. It's one instance where it says manufactured homes aren't allowed, but then we have several instances where we outline how they are allowed and how they're to be applied.
They are allowed in mobile home parks.
They are allowed in mobile home parks, they're not allowed otherwise.
Right.
On this particular point, Mr. Chairman, I see Commissioner Stein wants to weigh in as well. But on this particular point here, we've run into this before. We have to interpret the ordinances as they're written. We don't interpret them about what we think we might have meant, what we allowed in the past, what we might allow in the future. If the ordinance doesn't work, then there's a process for changing the ordinance. So we have to follow it as it's written. we're going to get into a lot of trouble if we don't follow our ordinances as they're written. So that's point number one. And I did want to come back on the item that's actually up for our discussion, now that Mr. Aker's back. On the agenda, and I think, Mr. Aker, you've asked before to have us evaluate a site plan with nothing on there, just a gravel pad. But that's not what we're looking at tonight. You only have one site plan submitted, is that correct?
Correct. I
Okay.
believe the,
Yes, this
just
one.
the naked lot, the naked pad was in front of y'all last month, I believe. I wasn't here, but I believe that was.
Okay, I don't think that one is consistent with the ordinance. I think that one is in direct violation of 8410, the section we're talking about. So I'm clear now, I'm clarified. This is the only site plan that you've submitted for action tonight. And then my other clarification is we refer to it as a tiny home and as a residence. Residence is not a permitted use in B2. What is a permitted use is a live-work unit.
It's not that.
And so, well, think carefully before you answer this, because what is permitted in B2 is a live-work unit with the business owner employee also residing at the residence and bed and breakfast establishments. Right now, there are no residences in any B1, 2, or 3. So let's be clear about that. Now, we might go back and visit that again and allow residences in B1, 2, or 3, but currently there are no residences as permitted use. What is permitted in B2, and I think this is the reason you pursued rezoning to B2, is a live-work unit. And a live-work unit is one where the business owner can reside in the unit. So tell us, is this a residence or is it a live-work unit?
It's a live-work unit.
Okay.
I'm only allowed by my septic permit to have a one-bedroom. This structure comes with the design for 2. The other bedroom will be an office for my business in Alcoa.
Okay, sounds like what you're requesting is a live-work unit, and that is a permitted use in B2. But I just want to be clear about that. Again, we have to follow our ordinances. If we don't like what the ordinance contains, there is a process for taking a look at that, and we probably can take a look at it at a future state, having residents go back into some of the B1, 2, and 3.
Okay, further questions or comments?
Yes, right here, the 20 by 40 pad that you have, is that where you're planning on putting the house, Mr. Acker? The 20 by 40, what looks like a pad, is that where the home is going? Because on here, it says that the septic tank is best to serve a motorhome, and also on here, it is a motorhome site. So when I was reviewing this, I wasn't sure if this was your motorhome gonna sit there or the house on the second page.
The
And
house,
plus, this says motorhome, this site plan says motorhome in 2 places.
I understand. It is for the home. There's a reasonably good chance that we will put it on high enough stilts to park the motorhome under the home, but if not, we'll park it behind the home. But all of that is legal in the B2 zone.
So my question is, since this is so vague, we're going to say, okay, we're going to approve this site plan, but to me, we've left it open because it says motorhome, motorhome. Nowhere on this site plan does it say single-family residence or work. And even, I believe, let me see, the septic referred to motorhome. I was looking at the permit.
Just sanitary location best served
Motorhome, right.
Yep.
So
The reason-
that's why I was confused. I did not know what I was looking at. And can we approve it like this?
The reason that the septic tank says where is suitable for the motorhome is we can't drive the motorhome across the septic tank, and the county, in their drawing on the septic permit, specified that we can put it wherever it will go, depending on where we need it to go for being able to drive the motorhome on the lot.
Right, but I'm just talking about this as a site plan. This site plans reflect a motorhome. It does not reflect a building. I don't see where it refers to a building.
Keep in mind, this is probably a redraft of the original site plan that he brought in, which was originally intended for a motorhome. So I'd say that's probably holdover notation on a marked up site plan. If you'd like, we can get a Sharpie and we can mark out motorhome and write single dwelling.
Yes,
house.
because if we approve this, we're approving a motorhome.
Well, actually, you're approving the house that's on the plans, just
There
because
is not a house on this plan.
there is on the second page.
Yes, but not on the
shows-
site plan.
Yes, the second page is part of the site plan. It does
Right.
show the elevation and the type of structure that he's going to be putting there.
Right.
Yeah, so, and he's telling us he's going to put a single dwelling home on there as a workspace within the office. So in regards to the notation, that notation could be stricken off the site plan. And
That would be fine. Yeah. And when you're looking at pictures of houses and while you're reviewing it, and you're looking at pictures of houses and you don't know what you're looking at, they don't say, this is the color, this is the structure, this is what we're gonna do. I'm like, does he get to pick?
yes, he
You know?
does, because we don't regulate color. We
No,
regulate
no,
the size of
no,
the
I'm not
structure.
saying, I don't know if it was A, B, or C that I'm looking at, because this is 20 by 40. What are these? I have no idea.
Irregardless of what the photo shows, the structure that he's going to be building is a 20 by 40 structure, and that's what we are reviewing, that's what we're going to approve. The style that he represents in the photo is just so we can have an aesthetic look at what the finished product is.
That's fine, and you know that, but I don't. I mean, y'all had conversations.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you just said that.
And this is not,
Introduce it.
it's not reflected on here. So that was one of my questions.
Doug, how many gallon septic tanks, the size of the septic tank for a single family on average, or as basically minimal requirement for a single family home?
That all goes through the state.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
That all goes through the state. There's different sizes. There's 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom,
Based
3
on
bedroom.
bedrooms.
Yeah, it's usually based off the size of the bedroom. I would assume this was 110 linear feet. That's what was on the permit. I don't remember seeing the size, but it should be on that permit.
They said 1,000 here on the site plan.
Yeah.
What would 1,000 gallons serve? How many bedrooms?
Well, he told you it's 1 bedroom.
I'm sorry,
1 bedroom.
4?
1.
One.
One.
It's approved as one. If you look on the permit, it's one.
And in addition to that, the motorhome.
I have a question about the septic as well. What is going to connect to the septic? Is it the motorhome or the house, or the live-work unit? Because the motorhome can't be occupied, it can be stored, it can be, so what's going to connect to the septic? Is it going to be the
Obviously,
live-work unit or the motorhome?
the live work unit. But I'm certain that we'll be dumping the holding tanks from the motorhome in the septic tank that we've put there, regardless of whether anyone's staying in the motorhome. When we come back from a trip, we're going to need to dump our tank somewhere.
But the live-work unit will be connected to the septic, that's what you
Correct.
can occupy.
Correct.
All right, any other questions or comments?
I just have a question for us. It says, all site plans shall be prepared and certified by a licensed engineer. Now, I do see where it was prepared. When it says certified, does that say Is that a signature? Is that a seal? What is that?
Usually the surveyor will put a stamp on it.
I don't see one.
The reason that C2RL did not put the stamp there is because this is a residential instead of a commercial property, commercial building. And they put for review there.
But our ordinance says all site plans shall be prepared and certified by licensed engineer, landscape architect, surveyor, and I don't see that.
I'm not real clear how the building relates to this site plan.
Right, I
I
bet.
mean, bottom line, the site plan looks like it's designed around the motorhome and
Right,
not designed around the building. I
but,
live, work in it.
right. I agree, but we can't just stop there if there's other questions. We can't say, do this, and then come back and say, you need a signature. I think we need to address all of the issues. Am I right?
Sounds right to me.
Okay, so we have the site plan, it's not certified. Okay, it also says a location map identifying the surrounding land use, including streets. The surrounding properties are listed by owner, but not use. Location of any existing and/or proposed structures. So this is when I wasn't sure what I was looking at. So that's not an issue anymore. Location and size of all existing or proposed utility lines, water, sewer, power. I see where the septic is, but I don't see location and size of all existing or proposed utility lines, water, sewer, power.
They're there. Clearly marked in the drawing.
Okay, I'll be happy for someone to show me.
So there's a legend on the right-hand side of the front page. It says legend.
Yeah,
Okay, if you'll look down under legend, it's got water meter, yard hydrant, utility pole, and if you'll look at those symbols, they are on the map. On the
okay,
site plan
I do
map.
see your water line now, I do. I
Okay.
see your sewer, your power, where's that?
Right where the power symbol is.
There's this E,
OP,
electric meter, along the left-hand side.
okay, so that's covered. I do see the topography, but the drainage plans, including location and size of tiles, storm sewers, and water receptacles and drainage easements.
There are none of those, and there's a report explaining why there are none of those on page 2. Prepared
I
by
saw
the-
that, I saw that.
Okay, that explains why they're not there.
But it also refers to a motor home site, that explanation does. Because now, you're gonna have, well, no, you're not gonna have a foundation because you're gonna have stills. But still, it refers to a motor home site.
I understand. And for those of us that were involved over the past 6 months of going over that, we know that these calculations were done for a much larger building than this.
Right.
So we're vastly better off now than we were for the larger building, but it has morphed. You realize there are thousands of dollars involved every time you get them to issue another piece of paper for you.
Right.
And it's been a struggle.
Yes,
It has been a
but
struggle to get the right pieces of paper to you all.
I understand because I've been attending the meetings and listening. I've been sitting back there. But when I get these plans and I'm reviewing them, they don't stand and speak for themselves. There's too many, will this, will that, will this, will that. So if we approve this as it is, we kind of, I think, leave ourselves somewhat open, in my opinion. And I'm only one.
Tell you what I'd like to ask. Pass it contingent on me getting the information here in a week's time.
Well, the reason we can't do that is because when we do get that information, who's to know whether, I can't tell the future. I don't know what that information is going to say. So that's why we can't do that.
It will say tiny home, single-family dwelling instead of motorhome site. Everywhere it says motorhome site.
Yeah,
We can fix that with a Sharpie tonight if you'd like.
if they will accept it. I'm only one vote. And then another thing, the driveway thing that's coming up, we haven't covered it yet, but is that going to cover parking? Because in here it says that it requires at least 2 parking spaces, and I don't see any parking spaces on here. But when I read the previous version of this, I didn't see parking spaces in there either. So I don't know if this was going to be added to, or that was an inclusion of. So that's a question I have for the future.
So homes in Townsend require 2 parking spaces?
Not a
Yes,
home.
that's right. It's
Not a home, it's a work unit.
Without attempting to be argumentative, I want to read something to you, since this has been brought up again.
Page
B2, Neighborhood Business District. It is the intent of this district to establish business areas that are compatible with surrounding residential neighborhoods. The district envisioned for single-family residential uses, 2-family residential uses, duplexes, a mixture of residential and business uses in one building. So single-family residential uses is in the opening paragraph for the B2 zone. It's going to have my office in it. It doesn't matter, but it keeps being brought up, and it is clearly single-family residential uses in your printed definition.
Also in printed definition on page 21, dwelling single family, not less than 2 spaces per dwelling unit.
I understand. I believe if we'll look, we have a gravel parking lot that is 100 feet wide and 30 feet deep. There will be plenty of parking there on that gravel pad that's laid out, marked gravel on the drawing.
Right, and here's another, it's just, more explanation of what is there.
But it says gravel in the legend. I don't understand what more I can do. It's in scale, and it says gravel, and people don't paint lines in their own driveway
No,
for parking spots.
I agree.
Okay.
This is the question that I'm bringing up. So the drainage plans, we don't need those, even though it's on the river?
He has calculations for a 10-year event. The post calculations do not require a drainage plan because it's not significant enough to make a retention pond or anything like that.
So we'll get the motorhome notation on the drainage plan changed, right?
Yep, that's something that we can.
Okay. Okay,
Parking in areas, now,
yeah,
parking in areas adjacent to the river are important considerations when we consider something like stormwater runoff. And I refer to your engineer's letter here indicating detention is not provided at the location due to the proximity of the little river. That sort of sounds like, well, we're going to have some stormwater runoff and we don't need to worry about that because it's going to go on off into the little river and it'll be away from us and that's not a problem. Now, I know that's not what you think and that's not what any of us think, but that's kind of what it sounds like coming from your engineer there. I think that in and of itself is a good reason for an ordinance change once again, perhaps here too. And I keep coming up with this, but for this type of a structure in proximity to the river as it is, we might ought to delineate a parking space rather than just allow parking for anywhere because, well, sometimes vehicles drift and that oil runs off and that's not good for the quality of the river. I'll just throw that out.
I believe that the topography aspects of the site plan there show that the land flows away from the river rather than toward the river. That was the line of thinking of why there weren't any silt fences involved with any of it, as well as the fact that
I would even, just for a safeguard, and we had certainly here in your letter, what happens with the various year floods. And 100-year flood sounds like 1% chance, but 100-year floods happen, as we all know, with a lot more frequency than every 100 years.
I've witnessed two of them, and I'm not quite 100 yet.
Some kind of swale there blocking direct runoff to the river, particularly with commercial type properties or property. It doesn't seem like a bad idea for a future ordinance consideration. That's not really specific to you, honestly.
Appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions and comments relative to the site plan that we're reviewing?
Just one more. All sites wholly or partially within any flood hazard area shall depict the special flood hazard zone boundary, the flood insurance rate map, the effective date, both the base flood elevation and the finished floor elevation shall be depicted on the site plan. I do see here FEMA flood hazard identification, 100-year flood elevation, minimum building floor elevation, framing and foundation per manufacturer's recommendation. And also, there was another place where it listed the above mean sea level, but I didn't see anywhere where it had the, like your floor and how high you're going to be above sea level, above flood and all that.
So that box up there at the top says the minimum height that it will be, and that we're going to be assembling the framing per the manufacturer's instructions for what they want the house to sit on.
Or they want, or we want, we want to be sure it's above flood.
I understand. So when we list the minimum, that means it's above the flood. That number is above the flood according to the FEMA rules. It will be taller than that, but if I specify 8 feet and it comes in 7'11", I have deviated from my plan. So it's better to say the minimum. We're definitely going to adhere to the law, and we're going for something taller than that. We just don't know exactly where it's going to finish up yet, because we haven't dug the foundations, we haven't done all the stuff that we got to do to get there from here.
So the special flood hazard zone boundary, the flood insurance rate map and date, it's on here?
The minimum, the floodplain height and the minimum floor height are both right there on there. And the elevation of multiple places on the piece of property are listed there too. The entire property is underwater at the 100-year flood.
Right.
By
I just
about 3 feet. So we have to build the house 4 feet in the air, but probably is going to be 8 and might be 13.
Right, but I'm just not seeing the flood insurance rate map, the base flood elevation. I'm not seeing that on here, on your site.
The end.
And that's my last question.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the site plan even with contingencies. Are there contingencies that need to be made for anybody to feel comfortable moving forward?
I would say yes.
Or are there too many contingencies in people's eyes?
Well, the one thing that bothers me about contingencies is the planning commission never reviews those contingencies when they're complete.
We borrow a Sharpie, we'll get it fixed right quick.
So I have trouble with applying contingencies unless we're going to make a motion that those contingencies have to come back to the planning commission to be reviewed after the team looks at it.
I think the way the contingencies operate, Mr. Chair, you can tell me, is they have to be satisfied before the secretary will sign the site plan. That's how the planning commission makes sure that the contingencies
So I
are.
believe there was an 11-day window after approval upon contingency for that to occur.
So let me understand, the contingencies will be met, and the secretary of the planning commission will then sign off on those issues
On the
What?
site plan.
on the site plan?
What are the contingencies?
There's been a lot of issues raised, but anybody like to try to delineate the contingencies? One of them is the label on the site being labeled as mobile home site. That's one that I recall.
So you want tiny home site, live, work site, what do you want it to say?
Okay, a location map identifying the surrounding land use. There's owners listed, but not use. Item 2 on the checklist.
So you do want me to list that it's beside the deli pub and a vacant lot?
I'm just going by what our rules are.
Any other contingencies identified?
He talked about drainage plans since it's on the river. What are we doing about that? Drainage plans including location and size of tiles, storm drains, water receptacles, drainage easements, along with the estimated stormwater. Okay, we have the estimated stormwater runoff chart for a motor home.
No, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not for a motor home, but.
Motor home site is what it says.
So we'll relabel that the
So,
same thing
with
we
it-
label it on the front.
With it being on the river, is that drainage plan good enough? I don't, this is my question.
The engineering drainage plan that Mr. Akert has provided shows that there's not a significant amount of runoff to require any additional retention or tiles or anything of that nature.
But, okay, including location and size of tiles. Okay, so you're saying there's not going to be a tile, a storm sewer, water receptacles, drainage easements, there's no drainage easements? The water can flow into the river. Parking?
Like Mr. Akert said, he's got, he intends to use his gravel lot.
But Mr. Haskell also raised the question about parking, oil dripping, stuff like that.
We don't have anything that regulates oil dripping in parking lots.
Okay, so parking area designed including a cross-section of pavement which shall utilize asphaltic concrete, okay, it's number 11, and it's very long. I don't see that.
So are you suggesting, since this is a live work area, that we're going to require them to pave the driveways though we're a commercial building?
It's better that it's not paved, really.
So the residents, he's opted for gravel,
Right.
so that you don't need a cross-section of asphaltic layers.
Well, I just stopped reading there because it goes on and on and on and on. Number 11, does that not pertain to us?
No. In my opinion, no, it doesn't.
Forest parking areas may be allowed by the planning commission upon submittal of a plan detailing the type, thickness, and location of the materials to be used. Any conversion of a forest parking lot to non-forest shall require submittal of parking. So it does cover forest as well. And gravel would be forest, right? So what are we saying about this?
Let's back up a minute. you guys keep changing terms back and forth. Are we approving this as a live work unit, or like Mr. Aker read, is it a residence?
Well, I see now that there's an inconsistency. We did take out residences as permitted uses, so now what's permitted is a live-work unit. But I appreciate Mr. Aker's point about the paragraph, that is what it says. So if that's what it says, we have to follow that, and so, or that can be followed, because that's what's in there. So I'm clarified on that.
In my mind, it makes no difference. It will have an office and a bedroom, so it is live work.
Okay.
But it could follow the parking for residents, in my mind, because that's what it says.
So we have two contingencies, the label on the site plan to read live work area rather than mobile home site, and then a map that includes the adjacent land uses.
And the topography, I see, goes over to the right side, but not the left side, not the strawberry patch.
Well, that's not his parcel.
No, topography and existing of finished grades when determined as appropriate by the building inspector. Oh, wait a minute, it was somewhere else. It was supposed to go into the next neighbor, because it is in this neighbor, but not that neighbor. I can find it. Okay, number 19, number 19 about the flood. We just have mean sea level. We don't have anything like the special flood hazard zone boundary, the flood insurance rate, map, the effective firm date. We don't have any of that. I don't see it. So that's something else.
Honestly, I don't know if I've ever saw that on any site plan, especially the rate map.
Is what she's asking for what's hanging on the wall out here that shows that my entire lot's underwater?
It is all, you are correct, it is all in the FEMA.
But it's
100-year
not
flood
on
plan.
your site plan. This is a
What?
site plan review.
It is, because it lists the 100-year flood elevation at numbers that are shown on the topography, as well as the minimum floor elevation of the structure. But if you need an aerial photograph, I'll take a picture of y'all's map that's on the wall over here, and we'll get that picture put on the site plan.
Here it is, the topography-based map of the site at scale that extends at least 50 feet off-site. So there's where I got it. It doesn't go over into the strawberry patch.
That picture may also include the neighbors, so that we can see that in the same picture.
Joanne, you may be getting to it, we said the seal of a professional engineer.
Oh, right.
And indicating that page 1 and page 2 are the site plan in toto, as opposed to separate site plans. This is one site plan.
Okay. Looks like I've got 4 contingencies.
Can you read them back to us?
We have the label on the site plan changed, a map for adjacent land use, topography on 50 feet of either side of the parcel, and the engineer seal.
And so these contingencies don't require any further review or deliberation by the planning commission. If they are simply provided, that would complete it.
If that's the case, why are we asking for it? If we, because why are we asking for the topography of the strawberry patch? Why are we asking for that? It's in here, that's why I'm asking for it. Well, why are we asking for it? What are we gonna do about it?
Well, usually we consider that when we're considering the site plan. So is it suitable for the topography? A contingency, in my mind, is something that, you don't have the engineer's seal, but if everything else looks, you can go and get the engineer's seal, and if he, agrees that it meets his review and seals it, then that would be something that wouldn't necessarily require a consideration by the planning commission. But if there's key elements that are in the site plan that require our thought and deliberation, then those would not be things that would be suitable for a contingency. That would require a resubmission of the site plan.
Oh, I get it, yeah. So resubmission instead of contingency.
Yeah, if there's things that we need to deliberate on, if it's just a matter of, a typo or something, or
Right.
changing something, then, I think everybody could agree that that doesn't require more deliberation. But if it's a key element that's in the requirement and it requires your deliberation, then I would say it would require some adjustment and then resubmission so it could be deliberated.
Right. So it's not a contingency, it's a resubmission. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that there are some things in my mind that are suitable for contingencies and other things that are not. And I'm trying to give some examples.
So is your all's picture hanging on the wall needed to be debated?
I don't know if that really shows what Joanne was speaking of as far as like a rate map for FEMA. I don't believe I've ever,
It's item 19.
I never saw that.
Page 48.
So I don't know if that would fit.
We've never accepted that under my tenure. The only thing we've ever required is the minimum 100-year floodplain, which he has provided.
That's what we've typically gone by in the past as well.
I have personally never seen what you were asking for.
But it's in the book.
I know that, I'm just saying, I've never seen it.
Okay, so,
Well, it does say in here, as determined by the building inspector. It says topography of existing and finished grades when determined as appropriate by the building inspector.
No, that is number 19 we were talking about with the flood, is number 19. And the topography was,
19, I see. All sites wholly or partially within the flood hazard zone shall depict the special flood hazard zone boundary, the flood insurance rate map, and the firm flood insurance rate map date.
We have a map of the flood zone, his whole entire property is in that. And I don't know that, I've never seen that be asked for, so.
It says here that it should be depicted on the site plan. Both the base flood map elevation, which is on there. Is it on there?
Yes,
Okay, and the finished floor elevation
there.
shall be depicted on the site plan.
the finished floor elevations on there?
The plus 1
Finished floor
foot,
elevation?
Yes,
Where?
right there in the box at the top of the page. Minimum finished floor height.
Which page? Second
The
page?
front page, page 1, top box. Says FEMA flood hazard identification.
100-year flood elevation, 1037.0. That is the sea level. That's the mean sea level. AMSL is mean sea level.
Okay,
Minimum building floor elevation.
is 1 foot higher than that, which is what's required by law.
So, okay, I see. So your elevation is going to be 1,038 feet above sea level.
Yeah, or more.
Okay. I did not interpret it that way, sorry.
So is that indicated on the site plan as the
It is not.
EFD and FFD?
No.
That would be a contingency. We could understand it
Yes.
as you described it, Mr. Aker has explained it to us, but among the contingencies would be to have the BFE and the FFE depicted on the site.
BFE and FFE.
Yes, as in number 19,
base flood elevation,
page 48, number 19.
page 4 elevation.
The topography is on page 77, and it's number 1 on page 77.
This is part of the drainage plan.
Right.
Okay, is that a contingency?
Are we requiring it? It's on this side, it's not on this side.
It's on there.
No, but it's not on the left side. It's on one line, not on the other line. 50.
Has there ever been a house in the city of Townsend or in the Townsend community in the history of the world that's gone through this much? Really?
And then number 4, under that, drainage design flows for the collection and management of stormwater runoff. Number 4. Number 4 on page 77.
Okay, so I'm not getting all of these, so what was,
Let's go through them again and let's make sure we've got them all down there, because if we're gonna approve it, it's approved contingent upon these things appearing.
so we have site plan label, adjacent.
There's
land
3
use map.
places, there's 3 places in the site
topography,
that needs to be.
50 feet on either side, we need the topography of 50 feet on either side, and an engineer's for that.
DFP and FFP.
So I have to survey my neighbor's land?
50 feet.
What is, are we talking about this adjacent property? It looks like there are some topo.
On the left, on the left.
Strawberry picks up.
Oh, strawberry.
But you know what the before floor elevation is, and he stated that his final floor elevation is going to be at least 1 foot above
Sea
the
level.
base requirement, and he doesn't know how tall he's going to make his pylon yet. It seems to me as though it's something that the building inspector can go over with him and make sure that it's at least 1 foot above.
Well, there's not any doubt that we're gonna be well above the floodplain. It's just she's wanting us to jump through a few more hoops.
We're getting into some real minutia that I think could be at the discretion of the inspector to be able to take care of.
And then just another question I have, sea level, this mentions sea level. What does that have to do, and this is a question, what does that have to do with flood elevation? I mean, I know what sea level is, and this is what he's listing as sea level.
So
But what does that have to do with how high the water can get?
elevation universally is recorded based on sea level. I mean, universally. Mount Everest is so many feet above sea level.
Right,
I
right.
mean, there's
I
not.
know what sea level is.
So the floodplain 100-year mark, sea level number is known. They know
Yes,
that.
I know that, but
Okay, so if we're going a foot above
sea
that,
level doesn't change.
correct, and neither does the flood level of what it reaches. It reaches X number of feet above sea level is what the floodplain shows. That's the way they measure how high the water got, was how many feet above sea level it went. There's not any other way to, there's no other way to describe it because that is elevation.
Right.
Well, isn't that why it says here to the base flood elevation and the finished floor elevation should be on the map? Isn't that the rationale for these,
Right.
having these things on the map?
Right.
Yeah,
That's why it's
so
there.
they just need to.
So it's more than the sea level, right?
It's more than the sea level at the
It's more than what's
flood.
on there right now.
Right.
So I would ask that both the base flood elevation and the finished floor elevation be a contingency.
They're there now, son.
Depicted on the map.
They're right there in the box. The very top center of page number 1 in the box.
in this book.
No, sir. Not that.
That's what he's talking about, sea
I
level.
believe sea level is measured from the mean high water as opposed to high tide versus low tide as well. Just throw in another picture there for you.
Right. So I'm just saying,
I think it's there.
it mentions sea level, but it doesn't say it the way that is in our departments.
Okay,
Is it the
okay,
same
but I'm
thing?
satisfied that that's what it says.
That's the reason too, we want to have the engineer certify this for us. Is it some professional has been over this and has attested to us that this is the way that the properties of the site. And once they tell us that, who will we question? The engineer who knows the numbers, I suppose.
Our job is to make sure that the things that are on the list are met. The engineers are back up on that, so. But I'm satisfied that those were both on there.
Thank you, listening.
All right.
Joanne, we made your secretary.
And just take me off.
I want to again say how much we appreciate that. It was some complicated
Okay. Here are the contingencies listed. The site plan label, adjacent land use map, topography 50 feet on either side, engineer seal, and a BFE and FEE notation.
Not necessary, because I think they're on there.
It's not verbatim. The spirit is there, right?
There's information that can derive where the base floor level is.
How high, so his floor is going to be 1,038 feet above sea level, right?
Minimum.
Minimum, right.
Okay. Are we comfortable to take some action? I have a motion and I have a second. I have contingencies on the table. Before I read them again, it's the site plan label, the adjacent land use map, adjacent parcel land use map, topography, 50 feet on either side of the parcel, and then engineer seal.
How quickly can we get these contingencies to Mr. Ackert so he'll know what he needs to do before?
You know,
He's sitting right
I
there.
think I'm writing down.
We don't want any
So
misunderstanding.
it's the
Not that
label,
we don't like to have you around, but
I understand. It's the label of the entire thing. Everywhere it says motorhome, it needs to say live, work, unit. Everywhere. I mean, every little place that it says motorhome, we're gonna say live, work, unit. We're gonna get a 50-foot adjacent topography map. We're gonna get adjacent land use map. Is an aerial photo of that place going to be okay, or do we need to, how do we need to do that?
For what?
You want the adjacent land use map, which is the
Well-
strawberry patch and a vacant lot owned by,
I mean, you have the owners, you could just put, in my opinion, you have John and Wendy, and you could put restaurant, pub, whatever, that's the land
okay,
use.
all right. So I don't need another map, I can just label restaurant pub there. All right,
And then the other side is vacant parcel, right?
correct.
Okay.
Owned by Mr. Hedges.
Then the engineer seal, that's the last thing that's on there.
And you know that that's an oversight. I mean, every piece of paper I brought in here to you all already had the seal.
Sure.
It'll happen.
Chris Soros, he can put a stamp on it.
now before your engineer puts the seal on there, who's he gonna call? To be sure he's got everything that we need this time.
Is he gonna call?
Yeah,
I doubt it.
he's not gonna call, well, we take a chance then that everything that we would like to have met might not be met. I wanna understand confirmation for your engineer, so before he seals it, we all know all of these contingencies have been met, and he's confident of that, and he can put a stamp on there.
Are these contingencies? Or do we have to review them again?
His seal
He
should
says
be
it all to
his
the board of
word.
commissioners.
But it doesn't go to the board. These are contingencies. These are contingencies, which are basically notations to be added to the site plan. And once they're noted, then I don't think there's any further deliberation. I mean, they're either on there or they're not. So these would be contingencies, which once satisfied within the timeline, would make it a valid site plan. They could have a building permit issued.
Okay, then our secretary, Joanne approves that. So you might call Joanne, be sure all the contingencies are met before.
Joanne will have to make, before she signs it, she'll have to verify that those 4 items are on there.
So, he likes to submit things electronically.
They'll have to.
Do
go
you
to
want
the
the 8,
table.
do you want the 8 hard copies brought to the city hall again, or is submitting it electronically going
And
to be?
we need hard copies for them revised, so that way we have them for our retention.
Glad I asked.
Yep. All right, so we've got these 4 contingencies. We have a motion, we have a second, and ready for a vote? Those in favor of passing the site plan contingent upon the 4 issues that we cited, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passed unanimously.
Thank you all. Appreciate that. Few more minutes.
Well, that only took a little bit of time. So, in the spirit of getting on with the business here, the planning commission had forwarded a driveway and grading permit ordinance for consideration of the city council. The city council considered it and found it to need some changes. So I guess we need to know from the city council what changes they would like to make.
Mr. Chairman, can I get those letters back at some point? I don't need them right now.
Yeah, you better hang on to it. Don't want to be responsible for losing them.
Thank you.
I looked through the original and then the revised edition. I only saw 1 yellow mark on the revised ordinance that came back to the planning commission. I believe it was the addition of the word driveway on page 2.
We actually removed a major part of section 14.
Okay, so there was an omission, more than a change or correction?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, section 14 had way too much in it for us, so we removed the majority of that.
Okay, questions?
I think also there was some question about the threshold for getting a permit, and then we need to clarify what that is.
Yeah, that's a typo on the original. It says 1 cubic feet. It was supposed to say 1 cubic yard. We again changed that to be 10 cubic yards. So, as we present it to the commission next time, it'll say 10 cubic yards. We also have a pay scale. I only have 1 copy because Gabe's not here, but we have a pay scale that's going to be designed on the area that's disturbed.
So the sectional fees and
Yeah,
fees and bonds.
Yeah, the chairman has a copy of the pay scale that we're going to be using for that.
I saw it said $1 to 500. I know before it was the board 100 to 500.
Yeah.
What does the board say?
This changes it significantly. It's dependent on the size of your disturbance.
That's more in line with what we need to be thinking about. Do we, when we have, along with our clearing code, do we have a requirement for permitting cleared material when it gets burned, or burn permit?
We do not. I think that would probably fall
Does the county have a burn permit? Is there any requirement? If I want to clear some land, I'm just going to push it aside and light the fire and it goes?
I think that would fall under the Blount County Fire Department. Burn permit.
Actually falls under the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
We could have a municipal ordinance on that, if the board chose to do that. Okay.
Okay, so we've got,
I'm still,
no,
sorry.
you're-
I know we're running along here.
I pulled the ordinances from 5 different municipalities that actually touch ours, and that being Blount County, Loudoun County, City of Maryville, Sevier County, and this town of Louisville. And our ordinance is actually significantly less than any of the other ones. We have only 18 points, and so I feel like it's small enough to fit what we need and meet our requirements.
In item 14, number 3, it mentions the grading and clearing for Pioneer roads shall be limited to no more than 10 feet in width. When I first read that, I thought Pioneer Road might be a first cut. I looked it up, and it seems that a Pioneer Road may be a historic road. How do we interpret what a Pioneer Road is to be? Which is it?
That's a great question. I would have to rely on some engineers for that answer.
That'd be good to know. I think that'll do it. I can come to you with any further questions I know, so thank you.
We have a couple of questions, a couple of changes that we've made, and we only have one copy of that. And Kim and Michael and I met tonight to kind of revise a few things, so.
okay.
It already passed when you guys won, so hopefully it wouldn't be a huge hurdle to get over again.
So, number 2, permit required, we thought it would be more prudent to have the amount set at 10 yards is the amount at which you need to obtain a permit for excavation work. That'll get it to be where it's a substantial enough size that we're not getting hounded with little permit requests. Then the next would be under 15. Kim had a recommendation under 15.1, exceptions. Number 1, emergencies. In case of emergency, such as windstorms, ice storms, floods, or other disasters, the requirements of these provisions may be waived by the building official, but Kim suggested that we enter in may be waived. Well, I can't read Kim's handwriting. We hand it off.
Yeah, I was simply saying that we should stress that it's acts of nature, and that the after effects and the post-stroke damage that we need a repair or remediation, so that somebody can say that because of the storm, they got altered and they don't have to put it back to where it was before. And on the converse side, is if somebody says that I had a building that burned down, and so I can build it exactly as it was, even though at the time it existed, it was still non-conforming. So that's the opposite end of the coin. The idea is that the act of God should now recuse you from rectifying what the storm damaged.
So what this is referring to is in the case of natural emergencies, fire, ice storms, you get a lot of disruption in the roads, and you need to cut new roads really quickly. This gives the provision that in the case of emergency, the provisions of a grading limit could be waived by the building inspector. However, it's been suggested by Kim that we put some language in there to say, even though you do go ahead and make these excavations, they will need to be reiterated in the future. They have to be corrected and put back to the original state. So those are the two changes that we identified before the meeting. The 10 yards and the act of, the emergencies act of nature being reiterated.
And the pay scale.
Yes, there is a fee scale that's based on the amount of excavation work to be done, and it's laid out in the form of acreage. So in the instance of greater than 1 acre, less than 5, or less than 1 acre, less than 1 acre would be $75. greater than 1 acre, less than 5, 200, greater than 5, less than 10, 300. Now, this is a scale that's been adopted by the city of Friendsville, and of course, you know, it's up to city council as to if they'd like to adopt and approve that pay rate, or the scale, but it does look like, to me, it looks like it'd be a good scale to model. So,
I've got a question. This whole thing started with driveway cut, and it morphed into having excavation. And the reason we were talking about driveway cut was because there was a property owner that made a driveway cut onto the road in front of the post office. And the style of the cut was such that it would be easy to pop your tire on because it was a sharp edge. You know, here we got this whole thing, but yet we don't say anything about what a driveway cut ought to look like other than the slope. And an apron that we don't define how big it is.
Well, it's funny you asked, the city of Maryville also has that same thing, and I have a copy of their plan here that they require, and all of their driveways have to be the exact same, just like this. So I called Joe Whelan, who is Blount County's driveway guy, and I asked him about that same thing. I said, how do you regulate this? How do you decide what's the problem and what's not? It's totally up to him, 100%. And so it would be the same that would fall on me as the building inspector to say, yes, that curb cut meets our standard, or no, it doesn't. So obviously it would just be my call. Nobody has that other than the city of America. They're the only, and all their driveways have to meet this profile.
Okay.
Exactly. There's no variance to it at all. But they're the only ones that require that around us.
On the cuts, there's two horizontals. I don't know anything about building driveways in the mountains or such, freely admit that, but there's two horizontals, one vertical. Is that problematic?
No, that's about what you want to do.
Shorten that up and eliminate more of the horizontals, and you're getting toward the latter type category, of course. That seems pretty steep, but do you think we're good? That's
Yeah.
the standard.
That's kind of what everybody falls back to.
I'll just offer a couple of comments. I know we don't have this up for discussion yet, but I think eliminating those provisions that were previously in the section 14, that's probably what the Board of Commissioners had some challenges with. In general, I do think it's better to let people know what the standard is. So if there's a standard for the driveway, I'm more inclined to have something like Maryville. And then if there's a need to have something different, then they could come and we could give the building inspector some discretion on that. But it would be better if there was a standard that people would sort of know. The other thing, I appreciate expanding the threshold for the permit, but that's going from a lot, 1 cubic foot, recognizing that was a typo, up to 10 cubic yards. And so the example that Commissioner Jenkins described is the one that sort of got my attention, and I've heard from residents about. That didn't require much excavation at all. I don't think there's any excavation. They just come in and cut the curb, and there was a permit wouldn't have been required except for under section 7. So section 7, there probably needs to be a link up here about when the permit is required and have a certain threshold, except for if you're doing a road cut, it needs to link this requirement in section 7. We don't want people coming up in the middle of the night doing road cuts wherever they please, because it might not be the right place for a pedestrian or other ingress and egress considerations. So I think that's taken care of, and it, think that's the intent. So this was the one, number 7. It just needs to be linked over here to number 1. And 10 cubic yards seems like a lot. But 1 cubic feet doesn't, it sounds like you couldn't even plant a bush or a mailbox. But 10 cubic yards, that's a big jump there. So I don't know if that's the right threshold.
That's three scoops with bulkhead. I mean, they just barely fill up the F-150. Isn't that right, Don?
No, that's a little bit more like a single axle dump truck. Yeah, 20 yards is a tandem axle, so you're looking at half a dump truck, which would be 4 scoops. 4 scoops.
So the cut in front of the post office would not have a wording, is that?
Yeah, but the one near the post office would be caught by the requirement number 7. You can't cut the curb. Once we've established a curb, you can't cut without a permit.
The thing with adopting what Maryville has in place, it would be hard for us to police that because we have some roads that are never going to be concrete or curved, and that, all of that design is geared towards just that, tying into the curve, tying into the apron. It would be hard for us in our rural areas to have something that would be a standard for everyone.
That makes sense.
I really like the idea of our modeling after some of the communities in the area, like Friendsville, like Maryville. I would like to really have something to shoot for us, is to be, have a few model towns out there that we could, rely on as resources and work together with as standards for us in certain circumstances where we may not have the experience that they've had in certain issue areas. And I think reaching out to those guys and using those resources could be really important to us as we move toward the future with making good decisions. I'm not sure. I don't know Friendsville very well. I've ridden through there. I don't know the town very well. Of course, I see Maryville on a daily basis almost. They're much larger than we are right now, obviously. But there's some communities out there, I'm sure, in East Tennessee and in other places in Tennessee that would be very desirable as things for us to move towards. And I believe we're thinking in the right direction if we're taking advantage of that.
We don't have a lot of pre-existing curved end housing. We're mostly rural roads, and so adopting something like Maryville has doesn't make sense necessarily for rural roads. I get that, but where we do have existing curbs, and we might have more later on, would it make sense to have a profile where existing curbs or curbs do exist?
Whoever has the permit holder, I would hold them accountable.
Yeah.
All of you.
The main thing is, to me, is trying to get something on the books. There's a big difference between nothing and a little bit of something. And so we need to get started on this. I think we're behind, and I think we've suffered for it. So I think, this is necessary. We don't need to go overkill. We can always adjust it as time goes on. So I think the adjustments that have been suggested to this make sense to me. Just my suggestion would be to tie that number 2 to number 7.
All right.
I still got comments.
Okay, we have more discussion.
Sure.
Here we go.
Since I've been involved with the city since 2010, there's been 5 building inspectors. So we're going to leave something up to the current building inspector to decide what the curb cut ought to look like, how big the apron ought to be, whether it ought to be concrete or gravel or whatever. Seems that's could lead to a lot of inconsistencies. That's my opinion.
You trying
So-
to do that?
Yes.
So Commissioner Jenkins, what if we did, what I was suggesting is where we have existing curves, we would adopt a profile, and then, it would be, as we grow, we would be able to, and we extend where curves are, then that profile would become more consistent.
So,
And it could be a model for others.
I would think you'd want to set a minimum apron size and define the surface of what that apron would be. Should it be a hard surface, should it be gravel? And it's a minimum, and then he could twist somebody's arm to make it 3 times what the minimum is. But I think
Having
that's
something that folks could
yeah, I
do
just
the
think
standard.
that.
How do we get from not having anything to having
Right.
something? And so
Right.
I understand that suggestion.
We could add, same kind of sketch that Maryville has. Most municipalities have that. It's something to work forward or to be used where possible.
Yeah, it's easy, I mean, it's a standard, and you can,
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay. So you get enough direction on council would like to.
I wasn't taking notes, I hope you were.
Well, the good thing it's recorded. Go back and have a watch. All right. This, city front, Mr. Akers. All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to, we don't have anything under old business. We have other business. Are there any local administrative items? Kim?
Yeah, a couple. One is, some time ago, I brought to you the issue about peer construction for mobile homes or manufacturing. And it's something that we need to adapt. And it's no, the ban on modular homes or any manufactured home doesn't stand the test in any sense. So the way around that is to make sure that we concentrate on their construction to make the foundation permanent. But there's nothing that will hold up in any sense or practice or legal that can say that we can just outright ban.
Is there a TCA law that I can read, see what that says?
I do not know if there's one, but I know that we have counsel all our client committees to do that and damage the what, and I submitted a copy of that.
Yeah, I'd like to read it.
Ordinance in the past, I can resubmit it so you know
Yeah.
what it says, but the idea is to look through that and agree that it reflects, but it's basically a construction detail more so than anything else. So I can share that again for what we did for damage. So that's one. And number 2 is I'm going to be traveling for about 2-3 weeks to go see my children, so I will be around at that particular time, maybe starting as early as the middle of this month. And so I will talk to you to figure out what else needs coverage in my absence, and so that anything that might need to be covered is covered.
Will Joe be here?
Yes, Joe will be around, so he's the person actually I'll be talking to. Yes. But I'll talk to you first to make sure there's anything, and then ask him to step in my absence.
Hey, Doug? Yeah, did we get an action item on that? Is that going to the commission again? Where do we go from here? What do we need?
I believe it'll go to the city council, yeah, after our discussion here. We got a bunch of head nods out of everybody.
Okay.
Okay, Kim, did you have anything else?
No, that's all I can do. Anything else I'll communicate with you.
Any status reports, updates on anything?
Mr. Chairman, just one thing for the planning commission to be thinking about. Among the key priorities that the commissioners discussed at our workshop is emergency planning. And so, of course, flooding is foremost of our mind, and I know a lot of our neighbors on the other side of the mountain still dealing with that. Wildfires, a lot in the news today as well. And so one of the things I think we're going to be working on as a board of commissioners, and maybe we'll involve the community plan on this, is looking at risks for flooding and wildfires. We do sit at the confluence of the west prong and the middle prong of the Little River, and that's a whole lot of drainage coming down. So if we had rains equivalent to what they have on the other side of the mountain, these are potentially catastrophic events. And so I'd like the planning commission to be thinking about that And there might be the situation where the Board of Commissioners does come to the Planning Commission and ask y'all to take a look at our zoning ordinances, make sure they are fit for those, the potential for those catastrophes for flooding and for wildfires. So just something to be thinking about, and one of the things I wanted to highlight from our discussion.
Kim?
Yeah, one last thing I forgot is, I really already reported this to Dave, that we're continuing with the CPAC work. We met with the UT data center today. And so I'm going to start working on developing the presentation. And I should be back by the first week in February. So I'll be back before County Commission. But the idea is that after that, when I return, then I'll work to schedule a workshop around the date. And I explain how I'll be doing that, so he can then convey that to the committee, and if possible, we will try and meet up next week. He's planning to come to the office to get some more details, and I can show him some of what I have done, so that he can convey it to the committee. So that's another thing I'm interested in.
Can I ask a question? It's not on the agenda, it's not anywhere. When I was at the New Year's Eve party I went to, several people there asked me what it would take to get a group of houses rezoned from R1 to R1E. And I didn't know the answer to that. And since Mr. Aker got a single parcel rezoned, these guys wanted to know if they had 2 or 3 houses together that wanted to be R1E, what did they need to do to get the city to consider that?
We have had a recent petition from citizens to rezone property from R1 to R1E, so citizens can come together and provide a petition. I think that was the process.
So I guess what they didn't know is that they have to get everybody on their street to petition, or can 3 houses together petition, or can just one? That's what they were asking.
I'd say yes to all of the above. I mean, one could petition, they could get a group together and petition.
Okay, so there is no, as far as you're concerned, there's no minimum number of houses.
Let me check on that for you, because Catherine Becker has done a number of.
Can you use your microphone?
Oh, sorry. I'm saying that Catherine Becker has done a number of them, either one way or the other, in or out of the R1. So let me check with them. I do believe that there is a vote count that needs to happen, at least 2/3 or so, but don't count me on.
A vote by whom?
By the owner.
Oh yeah, you cannot rezone a person's parcel if they don't request it.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that in a group, I think there's a fraction of what constitutes as an acceptable majority. So that is one thing that I have to double check with. As I said, I don't quote me on anything. We have done a number of them with Catherine, but I can't recall. But I do know that a tally of votes, no pun intended,
It's Italian.
is discussed. So I will, worst comes to worst, in my absence, I can put you in touch with the planning department in Canada.
So,
Yes, it can be done.
okay.
So I guess-
I just don't know what the full
So
plan is.
if 2 houses want to do it, and they both want to do it, then there's no need for a vote. They both want it, and they can petition the city to do that. Okay.
I'm saying, let me confirm that with Catherine first.
Okay.
So, Pat, won't be invited to this party.
I didn't put on the party, and they didn't want more than one city commissioner there, because they knew what kind of party animal she were.
Oh, looks like Mr. Akers got a comment.
You all mentioned that you were thinking about looking at flood damage or fire damage emergency care. We've got the same thing underway with some commissioners at the county level, because some of us that were trying to help people in North Carolina were finding out that they weren't permitted, according to their zoning regs, to have a temporary building shanty, whatever you want to call it, to live in while they're trying to recover everything they own. And we thought that was the wrong way to do things. So we're trying to do something at the county level to address the same thing that you just mentioned. And I think it's highly recommended based on the horrible things that we've seen up in North Carolina, so.
Yeah, that's a good example of the
And
kind
my
of
church,
things.
my church ran into that. They ended up having to build 3 shelters in place of tents, and they couldn't get permission to hook up to electricity or water.
Yeah.
And so we had to buy them generators so they could have electricity.
That's the kind of thing we might need to take a look
I
at our
agree.
zoning ordinance. for
Just have
emergency.
it labeled as emergency, yeah.
We do need to think about flood hazard mitigation, post-disaster recovery and evacuation plan. Just start somewhere, and we can amend and make it better and move on through time, but, yeah, just something, and we might model that after something somewhere else has. It could be made available to us.
Well, that resource center has put in a grant to that effect.
Yeah, but I think the process you're describing, Kim, with the workshop, be a good place to start. So.
Mike, is Chief Stallings involved with this group that you're speaking of that's?
I don't know who's reached out to him, 2 or 3 different commissioners have approached me to see if I would be interested in helping sponsor something, and I mean, absolutely. I mean, you could have an emergency planning meeting and do whatever you wanted to do, but it would be nice to have something that does not prevent things like them not being able to hook up to power. I mean, it's insane. And I mean, these people have lost everything, a lot of them, and it's a big deal. And then your heart goes out for them, you know?
Let me also mention that our E-Tech has put some funding to staff and emergency staff members, so somebody's going to be hired on.
Good.
All right. Okay, is that the other business? In the 2-hour mark, I'm asking for adjournment. So who moves?
We adjourned.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion second. Those want to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for attending the meeting.